And with that, I would basically like to give to Stefan to tell you a bit what Evailable is, what they're doing, and what they can provide for operational excellence. So I will change the presentation.
Yeah,
now.
but maybe just a side note before we dive into the presentation by Stefan, can you just give us a little bit of context on how the collaboration started, Robert and Stefan, maybe also both of you?
Yeah, I can give a quick answer to that. I mean, obviously, we have the same customer segment, so we are both looking for, or we are both serving charge point operators, which have the challenge to, what I said, orchestrate systems. They are in need of special systems for, in our case, obviously for load energy management, and then in the wider perspective also, or in the longer perspective, to also create VPPs, provide not web services, provide grid services through charging infrastructures or with charging stations. And we have known each other for some time, and we got the first customer, and then actually we made the integration. That's from my perspective.
Yeah, it has been pretty on the same page, we both. I mean, you had the broker approach to enable your own solution, and we said the conclusion was, why you're not offering to the customers, to other CPOs, because you need data first to control your business, and second to enable other service like Evailable, and that has been the starting point for the cooperation. I think last year in ICNC we detailed that approach, and now we offered to the market, or you offering it to every third party who is interested in that solution, and that I think that's a cool step.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. All right, so let's dive into Evailable.
Yeah.
Let's dive into Evailable, and I will introduce myself very shortly. When I started in 2007 in e-mobility, I mean, the landscape looks really quite different than today. I was involved in the first AC charger development, and also in the ISO 15118 definition. And since the initial idea of Evailable, I've been responsible for that. And today I have the pleasure to lead that topic as the managing director. So let's jump in. What is Evailable doing? Can you share the presentation? Perfect. Where does Evailable come from, and why do we exist? And shortly, in a nutshell, we are a powerful AI tool for operation of charging infrastructure, and we predict events before they occur. We can help save operation costs, and we improve the availability of the charge points. And the product was firstly developed within the E.ON group, and because it was a combination of in-house expertise in AI and e-mobility, what we really developed a unique product for charging infrastructure operation, and that value has been demonstrated with the charging infrastructure, the internal one. And it comes to the decision that we want to offer that to the external market, and therefore we become a known company. And what we are presenting today is already in operations in 8 regions at the moment. So next slide, please. Well, the last year it happens a lot, and with a lot I mean the sheer boost of build-up of charging infrastructure, and that is pretty good or great achievement from all CPOs and hardware manufacturers who made that really possible, and it's also a huge step in the entire industry. And when we look at the figures, at one hand, I think the better in terms of infrastructure, but however, there are also side effects of large infrastructure. And we all know that with large networks comes great responsibility. And I ask also myself, what are really the downsides of larger networks? And then we come to the next slide, what is really the challenge at the moment? And when we look at people who drive electric, we see the following picture, that only 13% of the individuals have experienced no problems at all, and that's just 13%. I mean, imagine you're buying a cell phone and only 10% can do proper calls. I mean, that is something what should not be. And most common reasons are issues with starting a session, charging performance, or unsuccessful sessions. And for me, that really looks quite alarming that so many EV drivers have such a bad experience. And at the same time, I'm asking myself, is it really the situation we find ourselves in the industry? And to answer that questions, let's have a short look at the uptime values of the CPOs. And Robert, next. For the last couple of months, we analyzed some uptime data from different CPOs, and we focused on DC because of the really high investments. It's really quite interesting to have a closer look on that. And it turns out that some CPOs are performing pretty well according to the OCPI data, and some others lagging behind. But overall, the picture doesn't look too bad, does it? And that now it comes back to the EV drivers. What the hell they are talking about? Next slide. So who is right now, and who is right now? I mean, I got the impression that these uptime values are not really the point, what really counts for the EV driver. And that also we see, I mean, you have made some similar experience with that, and that is exactly the picture on the next slide, that uptime does not equal reliability. And that is really the point. What really counts is successful charging sessions for the driver, and not only for the driver, but also for the CPO. And at the one hand, we see uptime values which are pretty high, but they are not really resulting in successful charging sessions at the end. And when we have a look on the picture and the data we see on the right-hand side, that are two examples from on the left that are test drivers from P3 Automotive across Europe, and they did tests with 5,000 charging sessions, and they found out that that is not working properly. And on the other side, you see data in our system when customers starts using Evailable. And it turns out that 20% or more than 20% of the charging sessions are not successful. That means at the same time, every fourth charging session is not successful. And honestly, the driver does not care if it's a charger, the back end, or something else. He just want to drive. And at the end, that should be the motivation for us to improve. But how do the CPOs, yes, please next, are working? And what is really difficult at the moment is, and that reasons we hear again and again in interviews. And first is the network is growing, but your team doesn't. Second is that you do things which you should not do as a human, you could automate. And the way of working today, the way of working is more on incident ticket driven. At the same time, root cause analysis are manually. You need to know OCPP as I would say as a second language, and it's really a bumpy road in the root cause analysis. And then it's piling up the cases, and you just resign it or send the field service out. And next, that is exactly the point where we started using or looking in AI 3 years ago. And the reason has been really quite clear when you look at the data. For example, an HPC charger is sending nearly 700 messages a day. And that means when you operate a charging infrastructure of, let's say, 500 stations, you have 10 million data sets a month. And now it's getting really tricky to solve that with Excel. And when we look at the data level of incidents, that's just more than a single error code, and it could have at least 3 dimensions. It's the sheer number of errors. The faults could be hardware specific, or it could be a combination with external factors, and then it becomes really complex. And to make it even worse, there are endless combinations possible, and that is where AI can really help. We, as Evailable, our vision is that everyone deserves to have a successful charging session. Can you jump on the slides, please? Next. And our solution, next slide, please. Our solution does basically 4 jobs. And first, we identify and unify failure information, and that it makes easy for the operator to understand the condition, and it's visible in a graphic way without reading the code. And additionally, we combine that also with field experience. Second is that is connecting the dots and the pieces and give data a meaning. And today we all know it's still code driven, and therefore a high effort to get the essence out of data. And for us, it's instead of leaving the operator alone with critical code, we use machine learning to get behind the meaning of the data. We also do, with the power of R, we predict failures up to 1 week in advance. And that is a pretty nice thing, because it's pretty good when you detect things before the customer calls. And accuracy is a really good level of 40 to 50%, 2 days ahead of an event. And we solve, that's the last thing, but not the least thing. We automate the operations with our healing automation, and we do it really successfully 100K times per month. And that is simply carrying jobs you don't want to do manually anymore. Another thing is automation is also ticket creation. We know ticket creation is really a pain and not really a pleasure. And we also know that the quality of tickets are limited and often. And that's exactly why we automated event-based ticket generation. Everything at the end, less trouble and more revenue. On the next slide, you can see that we have 4 products in the lineup, and each product is tailored to the needs of CPOs, hardware manufacturers, or CPMS. You will also ask, what is really the difference? On the next slide, please. You might ask, what kind of features are behind this product? I would not dive really deep into that today, but just mention a few topics. First, our dashboard has all relevant KPIs inside in real time. We use healing automation, what I mentioned before, where software learns when, for example, a restart should be triggered and could solve a problem that we do automatically. We also have machine learning models which analyze failures and charging behavior that you see, I would say, invisible problems. That is like a pile of snow is blocked, or vandalism and all that things. And last but not least, the AI prediction for prediction of failures 1 week in advance, and so much more. Let's have a look at the Evailable effect on the next slide. And that starting point is today's the incident process. And it goes from the first call via call center to the CPO and so on and so forth. I mean, you get the point. That's a pretty long process. All in one, up to 9 working days. And using Evailable, we saw that especially in the first part, it helps to see issues before the customer does. And solving these issues is also quicker thanks to the clear indicators and evaluated data and recommendations. So at the end, it means the more issues you can solve remotely, not sending out the field service. And bottom line, that will save you 2 days in the process, roughly, and makes your charger earnings revenues really earlier. However, the ultimate figure for availability, as mentioned at the beginning, are successful charging sessions. And let's have a look on this on the next slide. we know that 20% of the charging session fails, or more than 20%, and we are proud to see that our customers have really a significant improvements in the successful charging rates every month. And actually, every percentage of improvement is really valuable, and depending on your network size and utilization, it's something about 700k million euros gross margin every year, and for every percentage. And this is why we are so happy that one of our customer recently reached 92% of successful charging sessions. And yes, it's not only onboarding of Evailable, but the transparency and Evailable helps to improve the situation. So thank you for introducing Evailable here as an add-on solution, to your broker.
Thank you, Stefan.
You're welcome.
So we have prepared a couple of questions for you, Stefan. Robert.
Oh.
Stefan, Robert, you want to start with the first question?
Yeah, I want to make some comments first, because I myself also find the solution really exciting and so useful, because I know that operations is one of the key challenges for CPOs, and we can also see from our customers that where they really differentiate is in operations, because there is so much, as Stefan explained, there's so much you can lose when you don't have your operations in under control. And ultimately, and this should a bit close the circle with respect to why a broker architecture could be an interesting alternative, or is an interesting alternative to the standard architectures or the classic architecture, is that, of course, it's all about the data, right? So if you have the data, then you basically you can apply methods, you can apply AI or whatever, but at the beginning, the core, the basis of it, that you have data transparency. And we hear that a lot from CPOs, that they say, but we don't have the data, or we can't get it, or it's so difficult to get the data, or we are not sure the data is really transparent. And I mean, in operations, it's not always only the OCPP flow or logs or what you get by OCPP, but it's also about the connectivity, right? So is the charger, so who did actually close the connection? Is it the charger? Is it the backend? And I think that information, you can at least get when you put a system in between, which can gather the data and aggregate that, including connection data, or I think you also mentioned sensor integration through a broker. That just as a comment. So I have some questions. The first question is, so from your standpoint, why do you think, and I think I basically answered it already, is data the oxygen for our charging business? But maybe you could give your perspective. I gave mine, and maybe you can give yours now.
Yeah, well, I was about to add something what you said, and you're absolutely right. We say data is the oxygen for the charging business, and the good thing is, and that is you also mentioned, actually we have more data available than we actively use as a CPO. And having said this, we see that the lack of data-driven business models leads to inefficient business operation. And I mentioned the example before. Imagine you are responsible for 500 charge points, and you have 10 million data sets every month, and that is just OCPP. And Robert also said there's a lot more, like sensor information and all that stuff. And that is quite valuable data. And in the most cases, we only use a fraction of this information, what is really hidden in that pile of data. And that means you really miss miss out quite a lot of insights, and at the end, I think a lot of money will also use or lose down the road.
So when the customer's approaching you and they realize that they realize the value of their data. So what from your perspective is the biggest challenge they experience these days?
Yeah, that's also a good question, and they go through that moment a lot of times by now, and there are some companies, they have the idea, wow, that's cool, let's use our data and put it in a new service, and then what happens next? I mean, in many cases that they realize that a CPO or CPO realize that this valuable data is somewhere in a closed environment. And as long you stick in a closed environment and with a given use cases, then it's fine. But there are no interfaces to extend your technical skill set. And let's make an example. And imagine you have Robert, you have created some Word documents and stored in Microsoft Cloud. And in the past, you have been okay with that because you're working with the documents in the Microsoft Cloud. But at one day, you decide, hey, I would like to do something else with that, with your written content. And then what would you do if Microsoft would not allow to extract your data? and that is not good, right? And I think that is exactly the point. To be honest, it's not all times that bad. We also have great examples where CPMS have a great API approach and where you can connect to third-party services, but there are also examples which it come pretty close to my story that the data is locked. And that brings me to the basic challenge. If you have a business like a CPO, the data which your charge points or machines are created needs first gathered somewhere in a neutral place. And I would say make sure that the data is in the hub enabled with, for example, FlexCharge, and then you can decide to what kind of service or which use cases you want to cover. And I think that is a really massive disruptive topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now the question, and then basically now we looked a bit into, okay, what is the challenge with the CPMS systems? And I completely agree. It's not black and white. It's not all of them, and it also depends on, yeah, you have some legacy backends and so on and so forth. So it's complex. But what we can see, and I would actually like to hear your opinion, because I know you have quite a long history in EV charging business. What I can see is the big players, all the big players and the leading guys, CPOs, they use brokers. And there's a reason why they use brokers. Either they use broker or they've built their own CPMS. So yeah, maybe you can give a bit on your perspective how you see that architecture. I don't know if it's a shift, but at least what we can see is that more and more CPOs asking for broker solutions to basically build this independence. And so just wanted to hear your point of view on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is also my impression. The larger the CPOs are, the more they come and have their own data in their own systems, and that is for enabling use cases. But it's also to control your business. Sometimes they cannot ask really. They could not ask really the question, how the business is performing, or what are every other questions. And you also not only for available use, you need data also to enable other use cases.
Yes, of course.
And I think there's a broker helps really deliver a value for the CPO, and it's not for us a perfect match. A broker, it's also, I would say, a perfect match for CPOs, and that is really different now. And when you imagine you have it in a central hub, and then you have the data at your fingertips, and then you can start immediately saving operational cost and for example, increase a successful charging session. That doesn't stop there. That is also what you planned. You can also do smart restarts, and usually it can take up a year until you get your data in the systems. But with your solution, I mean, that's something you mentioned. It's a week, and I think I'm pretty convinced that, as you also said, this type of architecture will be in the future for every CPO. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we could. I would really love to discuss a bit also the future vision of these architectures. What role the CPMS will play in the future. But I guess maybe Chris, we can have that in the podcast or something.
Yeah, and we'll come back in the wrap up talk about the fourth installment also of masterclass series. There is one question from the audience. Alex Close is asking, is it possible to host the broker on premise? That's one for you, Robert.
Yes, it is.
That's what Alex, short and sweet. That was the answer. If any question, this is the last few minutes to ask before we wrap up. So far, no questions. Again, you can always use thanks to our speakers for sharing valuable insights. It's been great to dive deep into how OCPP-Brokers enable flexibility and innovation. If you'd like to receive the slides, please reach out. We're happy to share them. Or if you have more questions, of course, you know where to find us. Mark your calendars for March the 5th. That's when we'll be back with the fourth and final chapter of our masterclass series, where we'll take a closer look at the tight collaboration and interface between the broker and CPMS or CPMSs with a plural. So that's going to be an exciting session with our friends from Evesto, ex-Longship. And if you're looking for more insights on the fascinating EV charging industry, don't forget to check out the ChargePoint podcast, available on all podcast platforms. Thank you all for joining us today, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
See you. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for the invitation.